Look out, everybody. Zach here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about bikes as we ride. Our guest today is the Kawasaki Z900 SE. That is just about a full-size 4-cylinder engine wrapped up in a refined chassis with an Öhlins shock to boot, for sale for about $11,000. And on that topic, there has been a fair amount of price creep, I think, in this category of mid-size naked bikes. I think mostly because they are so popular. Why? Well, we'll talk about that as we ride to work. You ready, everybody? I'm ready already. Let's get ready. Okie doke, everybody. Before we get going here, quick reminder that this episode of Daily Rider is brought to you by RevZilla. RevZilla is the name of the YouTube channel that you're watching. RevZilla is also the name of a company that sells parts and accessories for motorcycles and the people who ride them. Some of the money that RevZilla makes goes into making shows like this. So if you like Daily Rider, we just ask that you keep that in mind next time you need something for you or your bike. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Alrighty, Z900 SE. Let's start at the engine. It is a 948cc inline 4, so not quite full size, which is why I said just about full size, because not a 1000cc inline 4 as you would find in a Yamaha MT-10 or S1000 from BMW or a Honda CB1000, so on and so forth. But it does a pretty good job of sending us down the road, I think, as we will find out. This is a 2023 Z900, so it has a black frame. The 2024 model has a green frame, I believe, which is a kind of a slick upgrade, bringing back the green frame as I think they had in 2017 maybe. Doesn't really matter. Point is, it's $500 more expensive for 2024 and has a little bit of an aesthetic upgrade. On the topic of practical upgrades, you got your Öhlins shock here with remote preload and rebound damping adjustment, which you can do with this little knob here, which is pretty slick in my opinion. And other than that, what else does the SE have? It's got these Brembo calipers, steel braided lines. That's a nice upgrade as well, which we'll talk about as we talk about brakes. Other than that, it's basically a Z900, which is a pretty basic bike, right? Wheels, handlebar, a little bit of flashy green bodywork, and a whole bunch of torque. So I don't think I have anything else to say. The only other thing I'll note here, while we're in the parking lot is this pretty heavily scooped seat area here. The Z1000, former sibling to the Z900, had a fairly tall seat and fairly stiff suspension, but we'll talk about all that a little bit later on. Something to keep in mind, the passenger seat being a lot narrower than the rider seat and the pretty heavy scoop there. Aside from that, I think we're ready to rock and roll. So we'll fire up this little TFT here and we will be just about ready to go. Yeah. Sound like an inline 4? It should, because it is. I think 2020 it got these LED headlights, maybe? I'm not actually sure about that. And these little LED sideburn running lights. Anyway, a pretty sort of modern interpretation of a naked bike, the way it looks, in my opinion. Let's get started. Alright, now that we're rolling, we can talk about specs a little bit, and we're going to get stuck at this red light, which is when I like to talk about seat height. I believe the seat height on the Z900 SE, if memory serves, is 31.5 inches. You can see at 6'2", I got a pretty good bend in my leg. 31.5 inches is basically right in the middle of the road for seat height, as far as I'm concerned. Not low, not tall. And that's basically the same goes, I should say, for all the numbers. For the Z900, it's 470 pounds, which is average-ish for a big naked bike. It holds 4.5 gallons of gas, which is not a lot, not a little. And it has an MSRP $10,900 in 2023, I believe. As I said, it goes up to 11,400 in 2024. So yeah, basically middle-of-the-road specs. Same goes for the power, which Kawasaki does not claim a power figure, but I think it's like 125 or something is what you'll find when you look on the internets, and 73 foot-pounds of torque, which is more than enough, more than some of its competitors, and also less than some of its competitors. As for what it feels like to sit on, also pretty middle of the road, sort of neutral to aggressive naked bike riding position, upright enough to be comfortable, but leaned forward enough to feel like you're in command of the machine. The only real standout to me is that the combination of fairly high foot pegs and average to maybe kind of below average seat height for the category is that it's sort of a tight, that is very aggressive. Cool, well, at least you're using your signal. That's cool. The bend in my knee when I sit on the bike is pretty severe. And 6'2", I'm probably taller than the average bear, but you know, not that tall. So, especially if you're over 6 feet, I think something you want to keep in mind. If you're going to ride this bike for, you know, I don't know, track days or just like canyon runs for an hour at a time, it's not going to bother you. If you want to ride across state lines, you might want to get a taller seat. All right, we're out on the highway here. We're in the slow lane and we want to get to that fast lane. We'll go 50 miles an hour here and then open the throttle in 6th gear. And as you can see, I'm already going too fast for the fast lane. My point is excellent roll-on power and really good torque sort of across the rev range. One thing that is notable about the engine, I think, is that it does not rev particularly high. But the good news is when you get on the highway at 45, 50 miles an hour in top gear and then you roll on the throttle, it gets up to speed quite quickly. That's actually an excellent segue to talking about gearing on this bike. And I think that it's just sort of geared a little bit too short. I think I would gear it up in general, but especially what I notice is that the gear ratios are quite close together. Sort of like you'd expect to find on a 600cc Super Sport or even a 1000cc Super Sport, when you really want the gear ratios to be close so that you can always be in that really juicy part of the power band, especially when you're on a racetrack. But the thing about the Z900, it's not really a racetrack bike. I mean, sure, it can go on a racetrack, which we'll talk about later, but it's not for that. And because the power has that lovely, like, sort of wide available band of power, I just feel like the gear ratios could be much more widely spaced and it would work really, really well. Basically, the gearbox betrays the versatility of the engine, which Z900 is not the first bike to do that, but it is worth a comment. Now that we're on the open road, we can talk about open road stuff. You might be wondering why I'm not setting the cruise control, because there is no cruise control, or why I haven't used a quick shifter up to this point, because those things don't exist on this bike. And I think I would argue that by the time a motorcycle in this day and age sinks its teeth into 5-digit prices and has 100 and some odd horsepower and it has an Öhlins shock, it ought to have the capability to have cruise control and a quick shifter. It should have those things on it. More to the point of the open road, I think you'll find it's a pretty comfortable bike out here on the highway. It allows you to slide back in the seat, lean into the wind a little bit, pitches forward the seat, but it does have a kind of a nice cushion at the front of the seat where it meets the tank, so it sort of catches your sit bones and your crotch, for lack of a more elegant word. Yeah, I got some hot spots in my buns after a couple hours in the seat, but this bike's not really about comfort. I think it serves its purpose for comfort on the open road perfectly well. And with a 4.5 gallon fuel tank, range is not too bad too. I think I got 160, 170 miles out of a tank. I think for a bike like this, anything over 150 is good for me. It was still claiming maybe 20 miles of range when I filled up. So you could push it near 200 miles if you're getting really good fuel mileage, you're being cautious and you're ready to push that fuel light. But all that is to say, totally acceptable range figures as far as I'm concerned. As for mileage, I should sort of address that right on the nose here. This tank was claiming 42.7. I remember thinking this is a little bit optimistic, I think, but I think I saw, yeah, I mean, low 40s is what you're going to see, I'm guessing, unless you're really hossing on it or being especially polite, and then your figures might change a little bit, but I think that's a pretty good guess in general. And quick sidebar, it also has a range calculation right on the dash, which I find quite handy. As for the mirrors on the Z900, perfectly good. This is the type of bike where I feel like they could be just super buzzy and it could look like a anime cartoon action scene every time you're on the highway, but it's not. So I guess kudos to Kowalski for figuring that out. Right, time for the stop sign challenge on the 470. Oh, I stalled it on the 470-pound naked bike, and the stall does not represent my feelings on the Z900 around town. I actually think the clutch feel and low speed manners are pretty good. The only real downside is the low speed fueling, which especially at high RPM, like if you want to ride around town in second gear or first gear, I just feel like the on-off throttle down low is pretty bad. And so I counteract that by riding around at this speed in fourth gear. It's a little more gentle, and I still think there's plenty of power. Big engine, right? So you're not stifled by lugging it, which is a nice feature of the engine. Again, very versatile engine, more so than it's given credit for, I think. But it's still a gremlin that a lot of bikes suffer from. But again, I guess I just feel like when bikes get to be this price, they should be held to a higher standard, I think. Okay, I've got a couple full of stops in here, but none that were super juicy. Oh, that was a really good one. Nice. Yeah, good balance. You know, this type of motorcycle, I think, lends itself very much to having a sort of precise feel, because it's got, you know, it was put together with some care to how balanced it feels at any speed. And it's a sort of a compact riding position, and yeah, you just feel like you're sort of grabbing right a hold to the top of the fork tubes, and there's no frame mounted bodywork in your way. Everything's sort of open and clear, and you feel very kind of present on the bike, and I think that's one of the reasons that the balance is good. Okie dokie, Lover's Lane here. We can talk about passenger accommodations, and they are about what you'd expect. Not a super wide saddle back there, not a ton of leg room. It's a naked sport bike. It's not meant to carry passengers with any real amount of comfort, and that's life. I would like to point out one ergonomic thing that I forgot to mention early on, which is that my right heel hits the exhaust pipe whilst I ride, and that was a problem with previous generation Z900s as well, which I only bring up because it feels like that's something that would have been pointed out or someone would have noticed by now, and Kawasaki could have fixed, but it's not fixed. And it's the same thing that happens on Ninja 400 for what it's worth, so it might be becoming a bit of a Kawasaki trademark. I don't think it's reason not to buy the bike or anything. I just think that it's a mistake. I don't see any other way to couch it, and kind of a strange one. I guess I just don't see why you couldn't design the bike to have you know, enough leg room, or foot room, excuse me. And also, my feet are not particularly large for what it's worth. I wear like a 10.5 or 11 usually, so plenty of folks out there with larger feet. And especially I noticed if you wear sport touring boots or something, any kind of boot that has a heel on it, then when you have the arch or the ball of your foot, you're more likely to touch your heel to the exhaust pipe, because of course the boot has a little extra stack on it. Okie dokie, diving into the twisty road section. That's more fun than talking about passenger accommodations or what all else. And the Z900 is darn good on a twisty road. Darn good, I think. Nice and balanced. Does the fancy suspension help? Drum roll, please. This is what everybody wants to know. Is the Olin shock the best thing in the world? Oh my god. It's good. It's good. It's better, I think. The stock Z900 is not a hugely sloppy, soft, rubbery, numb bike, in my opinion. It's not God's gift to handling, but it's like pretty okay, I think. It's not like a first gen FZ09 or MT09 from Yamaha or something like that was just like, it was almost literally out of control. The suspension was so flaccid and strange, and like, so you put good suspension on it, you're like, wow, what a difference, holy smokes. Whereas the Z900 is kind of is it better? Yeah, but do you need to be a decent enough rider to really tell the difference, or have it benefit you in some great way? Also yes, I think. So yeah, I think it's a cool upgrade, and it's not a huge expense, the upgrade to getting an SE. So I think Kawasaki deserves the tip of the cap for that. But I think it's betrayed a little bit by the standard Z900 being a little bit above average as far as suspension and capability right out of the box. But the remote adjustability that this bike offers is pretty nice. You know, I would definitely sooner recommend this bike to someone who wants to go to a track day, for example, and when you're at that track day, it's super nice to not have to pull out any wrenches. You can just sort of like dial those little knobs and play with it. And am I a little disappointed that there's no compression damping adjustment on an Olin shock? Yeah, I am, but I guess I don't really feel like that's worth flaming Kawasaki over. I think it's cool that the options exist as they are, and you will probably be happy with the suspenders on this bike if you get it, I think. Right, we got a red light. We can talk about brakes. Oh, the red light stopped existing. We can still talk about brakes though. Upgraded calipers on the SE model of the Z900, and are they better? Yes, I believe that they are. I don't remember being hugely disappointed in the stock brakes though. I don't know, maybe someone out there has a stock Z900 and they're like, man, I'm just like fading the calipers and everything's like totally screwed up and I'm under braking. That's my impression of a Z900 owner who's disappointed in their brakes. Did you like it? These are undeniably good brakes. Radial mount, Brembo calipers, steel braided lines. This is like super high spec stuff, and it's very cool that Kawasaki would apply those parts to a bike like this. It shows that they care about the development about this bike. They care about the capability of the bike. It makes a difference. It's cool. All right, I think this light's going to be a little longer yet, so we can talk about the dash. I believe it's a 4.3 inch TFT, pretty standard issue Kawasaki dash at this point. Little bar tachometer here, gear position indicator top left, and then some data along the bottom here that you can toggle through with these switches here, up and down. Trip meters, and then range and battery voltage, fuel mileage, stuff like that on the bottom there. I think the thing that irks me about this dash in particular is that it has these up and down, oh geez, green light, time to go, just in time for what irks me. It's got these up and down arrows here to toggle through things. When you have to reset the trip meter, for example, you have to use the rubber buttons that are mounted on the dash. And I guess I don't understand why you can't just use these buttons to do those things. Maybe I'm missing something. And on a naked bike, it's not that big a deal because they're right here and it's pretty easy, but Kawasaki does this on other bikes too, and then you have to, like, I think with the ZX-10 or 636 or something like that, you gotta reach into the fairing and like push on these rubber buttons when there's up-down arrows right here. It's a little bit unrefined and strange, in my opinion. So yeah, take that for whatever it's worth. We blew right by the section where we usually talk about the engine, and sometimes I suggest, would you buy this motorcycle just for the engine? I don't think so. It's a really nicely prepared, nicely tuned engine for what this bike's supposed to be, I think. Do I wish it had a little more over rev? Yeah, but really like rich power in so many places in the rev band. I appreciate that. I just don't think that it's the thing that stands out on this bike. I don't think it's the thing that makes me think, oh yeah, that's the reason to get the Z900, is that engine that's not quite as big or sweet as some of the competition and not quite as light and sweet as some of the other competition. So yeah, that's my take there. If you disagree, good news, you're gonna be very happy with this bike. So coming to the end of the ride here, we'll circle back to that point we spoke about in the intro about how there's price creep in this category, and it's, you know, $11,400 for a Z900 SE in 2024, and it's $10,400 or $10,500 for an MT09 in 2024. I think it's $12,300 or something like that for an MT09 SP, and not that long ago an MT09 was $9,400. The prices are bubbling up a little bit, and certain companies, like I think the base Triumph Street Triple is still 10 grand, or is it less than 10? So there are companies that are clinging to that financial accessibility, but ultimately I think what I found myself doing, and maybe what you found me doing too, is reviewing this motorcycle as though it is in a higher echelon. And maybe it's because it's the SE model, or maybe just it feels like it's leaning toward this slightly different area of motorcycling at the price point going up like that, and these sort of like sexy European components being attached to a bike like this in the case of the SE. And I think that puts it under a different microscope. It puts it under more scrutiny to be better. Like, I want the fueling to be better, and I want there to be a quick shift, and I don't want my heel to hit the exhaust. When you're buying a bike that's whatever, $8,200 or something like that. I don't know, I'm making up numbers here. The point is, if you really feel like you're getting a lot of bang for the buck, then I can look the other way for those things. Maybe you do feel like you're getting great bang for the buck with this bike, in which case you can look the other way, and that's great. I guess I don't quite feel that way though. So I think that it's a good bike. I think that Kawasaki should be careful raising the price much more, or adding components that suggest it is super premium without adding some things and fixing some things that would truly make it premium. And with that, I realized that I never actually talked about ride modes. I should have, and I suppose I still can. As we take this bike down the dirt road shortcut, to answer all of the many, many, many questions that people had about a Z900 SE going down a dirt road, I can talk you through the ride modes. We jumped through them quickly earlier, and I don't know if I complained very much about how a long hold down will go cycle down through. There we go. Now we get to rain. I hold. We get to rider, and in rider you can see you can toggle between full power mode and low power mode, as well as change KTRC or traction control settings to one of 3 plus off, which is pretty good. And if you're as frustrated as I am that you can't see the trip meter when you're in rider mode, you'll be happy to know if you hold down the select button for a little bit, then the trip meters come back. Thank goodness. Okay, so we're back in road mode, and we can experiment with traction control, which is pretty aggressive in this mode, but it's always wanting to drive you forward, which I love about Kawasaki traction control. And as we go to sport mode, it should be even more so. Like, you can hear this like rumble and pop in the exhaust, like a cardboard box falling down a set of stairs as it goes grrr, and it cuts fueling, but it always pushing you forward, always wants you to go. It doesn't do the thing where it like crunches your crotch against the tank as it cuts power. Like, this is TC on. Wild stuff, right? Okay, oh, I gotta go back down, and we'll just have enough time to experiment with TC off, which we probably don't need to do, but why not? Nice and controlled. Pretty fun, actually. But yeah, that TC1 mode is pretty good. Allows you to carry a little power wheelie, which I think is cool. Even when it does slip, it allows quite a bit of slip, which is not something that most traction control systems, especially on Japanese bikes, will allow you to do. All right, time to find out if we can do a wheelie, and I think I know the answer. I wish I had a quick shifter, but aside from that, oh my goodness, this is a good wheelie bike. The fueling, again, not my favorite. It's a little herky-jerky, a little bit harder to control than some bikes when it's sort of like in certain parts of the power band, especially near the balance point. But in general, a good wheelie bike, and I think that how a bike behaves with the front wheel in the air is a really good window into its true character. Okay, now we find out if we can back it in. Yes, you can. Though you can't really adjust ABS. And that's sort of a shame, I think. And it does have a slipper clutch, but I don't actually think that it's very good. Like, you see it? It's not like what a bike with a slipper clutch is supposed to do. I don't think. It's supposed to slip. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, I don't know, flame Kawasaki again too much for that. Like, I don't know, is a slipper clutch not as good as it could be? Probably. But pretty fun bike. I think you'll agree. I hope you'll agree. Okie doke, U-turn challenge. We've actually got 3 parking spaces to line up in. Once, for the first time in a while. We can line up next to this smashed up Nissan Rouge. And full lock left. There we go. Almost 2 parking spaces. That's probably 2.1, 2.2 parking spaces. Not bad. I did slap my foot on the ground a couple times with this bike, thinking that I had a little bit more steering lock than was actually available, which is exactly what I did with the new MT-09 a couple years ago. And hopefully I'll have a chance to try the new MT-09 for 2024 later this Daily Rider season. For the time being, Z900 SE, pretty fun motorcycle to ride to work, I have to say. What do you think of how it sounds? I think it sounds fine. It sounds cool. It sounds like most motorcycles do in most Hollywood movies, right? Sort of like a generic inline four sound, not particularly loud. I don't need it to be loud, so that's fine. But it certainly doesn't have the kind of the character, in my opinion, the sort of like positive tone in your ear that you get from an MT-09, a Triumph Triple, a Yamaha MT-10, something like that. That's just, maybe that's just me. Okie doke, enough about what I think. Let's see what you think. You all asked some Instagram questions, and I'm about to answer them here. First one up is Luke Sebo. I get it eventually there. Luke asks, does it feel like a premium version of the Z650, or are you just paying for the extra horsepower? I say this question because, first of all, it doesn't feel anything like a Z650, so hopefully that helps clear that up. And also, sort of, are you just paying for extra horsepower is an interesting question, because in some ways I like that question, and in some ways I don't. In the ways that I don't like it is sort of like, aren't we all just paying for extra horsepower? Isn't that what we do when we want more horsepower? We pay for more horsepower. That's how it usually works. Usually bikes that are more expensive have more horsepower. That's how motorcycling works. I like the question in the way that it sort of digs at this question of what do you actually want, right? Like, you know, if you have a Z650, for example, Luke, and you're sort of like, if all I'm going to get is more horsepower, then I'm not interested, because I like my Z650. And in that case, I love that. Don't get more horsepower because you think you need it, because any upgrade involves getting more horsepower. I think that that's a good way to look at your motorcycling life, if in fact that is what you meant. One of the reasons it doesn't feel anything like a Z650 is it has more refined suspension components and stuff like that. So it is different in engine character and ride feel in many, many ways compared to Z650, but also it is premium. You're getting more than just horsepower, for whatever that's worth. Next question is from Raul Salanaranjo. I don't know how to say anything. Raul asks, would you rather have 10% more power or shave 10% in weight? Love this question. You could apply this question to lots of bikes. In the case of the Z900, I would rather have 10% less weight. It has a great amount of power. It's excellent. It's plenty. More than enough, in my opinion, to have fun almost no matter what the situation is. So I don't need more power. Would it be, you know, would 10% more power be fun? Sure. 10% less weight, I think, would make a bigger difference in making this bike feel compact and light. And keep in mind, it competes pretty directly with that MT-09. And the MT-09 is a lot lighter. I think 50-ish pounds lighter, something like that. So that's the thing about playing in this category, where it's sort of like, you know, the engine size is pretty comparable to an MT-10, a little bit smaller. It's so much more expensive and it's a little lighter. So it has that going for it. But then when we say, oh no, it doesn't compare to an MT-10, are you nuts? It compares to an MT-09. Well, in that case, that's not a good look for the weight of the Z900. So yeah, less weight I think would be better in the case of this bike. Great question. Really like that. Next question is from Jerry Oy, who asks, what would you add? I personally would like cruise control and or a quick shifter on mine, but how about you? You preach, Jerry. That's exactly what I said, and I agree with you. Those are the two things that it needs, in addition to a muffler that doesn't hit my boot. And then, boy oh boy, would that be a sweet bike. Last question, a bit of a fun one here, is from HeliB63, who asks, if the Z900 were a breakfast cereal, which would it be? Oh, I love breakfast cereal, and I love breakfast cereal questions for any of those paying attention. What type of breakfast cereal would it be? I'm tempted to say one with a green mascot, or like Honey Smacks or something, because, you know, it's a frog. I don't know. Here's what I came up with. You know the breakfast cereal Total? Total, it's called. That's the name of the breakfast cereal. And it is, I don't know, what are they, like rice flakes, wheat flakes, some sort of combination of rice and wheat probably. Maybe there's some corn in there, I'm not sure. It's basically like the ultimate generic flake. And it's good breakfast cereal. It's tasty. You can add fruit to things to your bowl of Total and you'll be extra happy. But it just kind of falls back into the, behind other cereals, right? Like, when was the last time you thought about Total? Probably been a minute, right? So I think it is a comprehensively good motorcycle that doesn't have any huge standout features that make you think, that is the reason that I need that bike. It doesn't have an engine that stands out. It doesn't have suspension that stands out, even the SE, in my opinion. It doesn't have dash functionality or sort of user interface that really stands out. It doesn't have particularly good fueling that really stands out. It doesn't handle better, like way, way better than other bikes in the category. It's very, very good at all those things. Sort of jack of all trades, master of none, and maybe suffers a little bit from a lack of sort of pizzazz in marketing. Not unlike Total. That's my answer. Maybe I'll get a box of Total and I'll try it and see if I'm actually right about that comparison. All right, that's it for the ride here on Daily Rider. Stick with me, of course. We're going to put it on the Daily Rider leaderboard. All right, everybody, here we are inside RevZilla West and the Daily Rider leaderboard, and you can see we now have 3 archive boards, 2020 and 2021, and 1 board there, 22, and a 23 board that does not have a topper yet because I am not a very organized professional, but it will, by gosh. And then of course we got the old Z900 SE up on the 2024 board, and because it's the first bike of the year, I didn't bother with the ceremony of slapping it up there because there's only one place it's going to go, the very top and the very bottom. So I think only fair, really, to talk about the Z900 SE in the context of the 23 board for now. You might have noticed I was a little bit muted on the Z900, right? It's like maybe a little bit uninspired, like good at a lot of things, like fun engine, good brakes, handles well, not uncomfortable. So what's the deal, Zach? Why isn't it great? I don't know. It just doesn't tickle me in the right way to really kind of stand out, like I said. But all the while, it is a good bike. And I only bring that back up again to say that on this 23 leaderboard, it's going to go pretty high up. I think it's going to go above GSX 8S, super fun bike, and more affordable than the Z900. So, you know, you're getting some premium stuff with the Z900 SE that you don't get with the GSX 8S. Is it better than an SV650? I mean, it's faster. Is it like culturally better? That's the thing about the SV, is like, it's not particularly fast or particularly refined or particularly anything, but it just, when you ride it, it just has this like joy in its blood that it's like wants to have fun and it wants to wheelie, and it's like light and easy and sounds cool, and it does some things that the Z900 does not. Z900 would be maybe on the podium, maybe 3rd, maybe 4th, maybe 5th. In this area. Point is, really good bike. It's going to be hard, I think, for the bikes coming down the pipe in 2024 to knock it off the top step there. If you look at the Z900, if you sit on a Z900, if you hear a Z900, if you have a chance to ride a Z900, if you do any of those things and you feel inspired, and you feel like, man, that's such a cool bike, that's the bike that I want, you're going to be happy with that bike. It doesn't do a lot wrong. So anyway, there it is. It is the first bike on the 24 board. I do hope you'll stick around for the rest of the year. We got more bikes coming on up pretty soon here, and I'll do my best to get my ducks in a row and have the archive leaderboard thing sorted out. I do apologize. In the meantime, thanks for hanging out for another ride to work. Hope you learned something. Hope you had fun. See you next time on Daily Rider. Whoa, hey. Weird. That Land Cruiser cut someone else off. Never could have seen that coming.